This is the last session before happy hour, so I know
Oh,
we're
I've
all
seen this.
here. Welcome, everybody. My name is Leanne. This is Sarah. We're going to be moderating the panel. Just an FYI, I'm a traveling moderator, so if I start roaming around the room, it's by design. So I'm going to try to sit still, but it probably won't happen. Super excited to be here today. If you have not downloaded the R4 app, I hope you all have by now. Please make sure you do that. The health screen must be done every single day, so please make sure that that is taken care of. And now let's get right into our panel. We have two amazing panelists with us. The topic is building your client referral business. We have two fantastic agents who've done a wonderful job at that. We have Marianne O'Keefe, Remax Properties, Newtown, Pennsylvania. Then we have John Teixeira, Remax Associates of Mansfield, Texas. So welcome to our two panelists. We really appreciate you being there. So, all right, come on, let's get it up. So, client referrals, right? How many times have you done business with a client only to find out that they went elsewhere or had a friend or a family member sell and did not refer you? Hopefully that never happens to anybody in the room, but the reality is it does. So what can you do before, during, and after the transaction to really ensure that you deliver the best quality service so your clients will want to come back time and time again? So that is what we're going to be talking about. Before, during, and after, what can you do in these 3 points? So before we get started, I want my two panelists, John and Marianne, to tell the audience a little bit about themselves and how they got started in real estate. John, start with you.
All right. Well, I got started in 2006, 2 years before we had a little hiccup, and I've been I stayed by myself until about 2015 before I grew a team. Everybody can hear me okay? Am I doing good?
Doing good, John.
And we grew a team to 4 agents, up to 4 agents. I'm actually scaling it back a little bit right now. But we did 81 transactions last year, and that's where we are.
Awesome. Marianne?
Hi, Marianne O'Keefe from Bucks County, Pennsylvania, just north of Philadelphia, a little south of Princeton, about an hour from New York. And I started just after John in 2007, so we kind of started in that same compromise market. It was a really down market. We actually had too much inventory, so very different than today's issues. And basically, I started on my own. I had just been relocated with my husband's job, and I had 4 kids in school, and I basically picked a broker that was closest to my house so that I could go home and do my laundry for my kids. So I didn't pick the best broker, but it took me 10 years to actually leave that brokerage and come to Remax 3 years ago. And it was actually the best, move that I ever made. So it was something that was in the works for a really long time, but I didn't have the confidence to take a chance in case, I needed that transition a little longer. So it's been interesting. I've probably started a team, had my first assistant probably at 7 years. And then I actually had my son actually ask me if he can do real estate after he graduated Penn State, which was not my choice for him. But it's really been a perfect match. So he actually started about 4 years ago, and we have 2 additional buyer's agents that I mentor as well.
Awesome. So you two have been in the business about the same amount of time, right?
About the same amount of transactions too. I'm right there. So
not that there's a competition amongst these two. So let's start talking about client referrals and how do you build your name and yourself to start with so you are recognizable. So let's start with before the transaction. So lead generation, gaining new clients, marketing, advertising, branding. Let's just kind of open the door here to start talking about how you promote yourself and get yourself out there so you're remembered.
So I could talk about this a lot, and I could go on and on, so you might have to stop me, okay? But
no problem, John.
I think marketing is really important, but strategic marketing and being intentional about what you're doing is really important. So consistency and intention is really the key to whatever we do. I always tell people there's a million ways to do this business, and there's really not a wrong way to do it. You just have to be intentional and consistent about whatever you do. Marianne and I probably have gone at this 2 completely different ways, and had the same results, which is an example of just consistency and intention. So for me, what I did early on, and I want to talk a lot about what I did early on, which I don't necessarily do all of these things now. We evolve, our businesses evolve, and we have more advanced tactics. But early on, everybody I met and spoke to, I put them in my database. I didn't just put them in my database, but I also put them in my social media database. That's another database too, right? And I did this so that I could touch people constantly at scale without a budget, right? I didn't have a lot of money when I was starting, and um, that that was the key for me, because I would get two things when I showed up at the soccer field. I never told people who I was, but I always have a Remax shirt on, right? And I would get questions like, "Hey, I see you everywhere," and they have no idea. Like, I'm broke and I got one listing, and you're killing it. Those are the two things people would say to me all the time. And it didn't matter. And I'm thinking back, right? It didn't matter how well I was doing at that time. People assumed I was killing it and that they see me everywhere because I was intentional about that.
I was actually the same way. So when I had relocated in 2006, I did not jump into real estate for another year. Got the kids settled in school, and then I decided, well, you know what, there's no jobs out there, and I'll give real estate a try. I had been a realtor for about 6 months up in New York, and literally the day I get out of training, my husband told me that we're being relocated. Jim is in the audience, so it's all his fault.
Hi, Jim.
And so basically, kind of to what you were saying, John, and I think we probably have all been in different, levels of that, but it's kind of fake it till you make it, right? I mean, from my perspective, I did a lot of marketing right up front. I did every open house that I possibly could. I did talk to anybody that I could. I was in the office every single day. I was listening to everything. So it was more of kind of an open forum, my office that I was in. So I learned more from my peers without them actually talking to me, because I was just listening to the deals that they were doing, and I was not doing any deals at that time. And there was one day that I basically got a listing opportunity. I had to write an offer, and it was on a Saturday. And I'm like, what do I do? So it didn't matter really what training you were doing. You really had to be kind of thrown into it. So I threw myself into it. That's kind of what I did. So I did some intentional marketing as well. I did a lot of branding of me, because I needed to introduce, number one, I had just relocated to the area, so didn't know anyone. So I just put my face everywhere that I could, whether it be, and I didn't have a lot of money either, to be able to do that. So I kind of created some opportunities. One of the things that I also did was, and this was probably about a year and a half in, is I paid for the article. And I think it was a couple of grand, which was not easy to come up with at the time. And I basically paid for the article to be written about me. And then I distributed that. So that magazine, of course, does their own distribution, but they also take your center of influence and do that mailer to them. So that $2,000 really was well worth it. And it was very much a direct marketing piece with like my face on the cover. So, and I probably wasn't doing near what I was doing now. So fake it till you make it.
Yeah. When did you start branding?
You know what? Probably a couple years in. It took me a couple years to really get the confidence, right, to do that. So what I described to you with social media, I did immediately. That was easy to do. And anybody who's not taking a full advantage of social media, especially nowadays, I mean, it was basically Facebook back then when I started, but gosh, we got so many right now. She was laughing at me because I was Snapchatting up here earlier.
He introduced me as Marianne. I don't know her last name, and she's from Boston. All of that is wrong. So.
Yeah, look
John
at my Facebook Live. You'll see how it really messed that up. Sorry about that, Marianne.
That's okay, John.
But you know what? I did something that I still do to this day that I bet you. I'm not endorsing doing this, and I've heard coaches say this is a complete waste of money, but it was really, again, it was intentional. I put myself on shopping carts, you guys, and it was in my farm area. There was a reason why I did it, because I had intentional marketing going out to my geographic farm where most of my sphere lived already. So I went ahead and put my face on the grocery cart of the only store in town that they were going to shop at. And I'm not saying that that's good use of your money. I know a lot of people say it's not, but I think if it's part of your intentional branding, your intentional marketing that you're doing, man, I can't tell you how many people have tagged me with the picture next to me, my face on a grocery cart because they thought it was cool that their realtor was on the grocery cart. I still do that to this day, as a matter of fact.
I think with me, it was a little bit different. I did really no social media. I still don't do a lot of social media, which is one of the things that I really have to be better at. It was supposed to be a focus for 18, 19, and 20, and I'm getting better at it, but it's not something I have done. For me, when it was the branding, it's very hard to measure branding, right? So when I would get a call, I started asking people, say, "Oh, where did you find me?" And I'm thinking, okay, stop asking them, Marion. It sounds like you're like surprised they called you. And they really did see my information out there. And so they knew that my information was there. I have a very targeted area, which is actually awesome, but also a disadvantage when in that area there's no listings. In that area, nothing is going on. So, that's been kind of a focus for me as well. But in my area, I definitely branded myself. I also was teaching Irish dance at the time. So I was teaching 120 kids a week. So I knew their parents. I was subtly branding myself from the real estate perspective, as well. And that was, all those things from a community standpoint really helped as well.
It's great. So this kind of ties into it. What would you do differently? Maybe when you first got started, that you know, what would you have changed in the beginning that you feel like would have made you, maybe more recognizable, or maybe invested more, invested less? What strategy would you have taken that was different?
I would have started earlier. I would have started my video marketing earlier. We all do this whole thing about not worrying about what we look like on video, worrying about, all of it. We all have that. And you just got to get over it and start doing it. Mary and I did that live you talked about. Thanks for calling me out on stage for that. I appreciate it.
You just call me Mary, and my name's Mary.
Marianne.
So it's all right, Sam. Don't worry about it.
Those are really cool moments that I think our audience, they look at that and they like, look at John's real. He forgot her name. He doesn't know where she's from, right? And so, I mean, I personally,
we actually rehearsed this we have met 4 times by Zoom, and he's never once got my name right. Actually, you got yours name wrong too. Yeah, he's not a name guy, but he's a people person, so it works.
Just to prove I'm not very good on Zoom. But yeah, so the point being that people, Mary.
I forgot what the question was.
The question was, what would you have done differently in the beginning?
So I have to say, I'm not sure I really would have done things differently, because I really think I learned more from the things that I did wrong than the things that I did right. When I had first started with that other company, I really wanted to be part of a team, because I really wanted to be mentored. And they're like, well, we really don't believe in teams, which really blows my mind 14 years later. And again, I kind of like begged to be part of a team. I'm like, I could get there quicker. Like, why am I reinventing the wheel? Why are you having me sit over here? And kind of, it didn't make any sense to me. But after about a year, I put myself on a team. I created a team. I was not the leader. And basically, I learned more from that particular team experience of actually what not to do. So it was really a great, great experience. I find now that the things that I'm doing now as a team leader is actually from my bad experience that I had in the past. So I'm trying to work through those things, but I have a team of the 4. And so my son and I are kind of the team, kind of, I can't say equally, but he's really does a lot behind the scenes as well as like in front. So I try to teach him, but I always think like he doesn't get that opportunity to do all the wrong things. So I think it's actually a better experience that I had to kind of suffer through to get to the top. So that's been kind of interesting. I think from my standpoint of the last 3 or 4 years, I still think I'm not taking advantage of the things that are right in front of me, because I'm too much in the business and not working on the business, which we all know, which I think the way you ran your business is how you got to be successful, and now I have to get off that track and do something a little bit different. And that's really creating another whole business within your business. So I don't want to change the way I'm doing it. I just want to add to it, and that's from a social media standpoint, I think that's where I'm pretty much lacking.
Awesome. And I forgot to mention at the beginning, if you guys have questions for John and Marianne, we're not doing the traditional mic running. So just open up the session in the app, throw your question in there. Sarah's going to be monitoring those, and we'll throw some questions their way. So let's get to during the transaction. We talked about before branding, getting your name out there. So once the transaction starts, you want to create an advocate, right? You really want to create somebody who's going to an experience, white glove service. How are you different? How do you make this memorable? What are some of the things that you do that you feel like really sets yourself apart in the middle of the transaction?
So I'm going to share something new that I do. I don't know that traditionally through most of my career I've done anything that almost everybody in this room doesn't do, to be honest with you. And it's kind of become this whole white glove service thing has kind of become the new mantra of our industry for good reason, because it's a consumer driven industry. Our entire economy is right now. I've employed a company called, I can throw names out right there. I employed a company called Client Giant. Anybody here use Client Giant? Raise your hand if you've ever, no? I'm the only one in the room. I see a hand. I see two hands going up back there. I'm sure that there's other companies like this, but basically when my transaction starts, some really cool, thoughtful gifts go out to my clients at the appropriate times during the transaction and they all text me pictures of it and they thank me, and then that continues after the transaction as well. So that's just a little tidbit that I've employed recently that I really like, and it really makes me stand out.
I think with mine, it's kind of service too. I have always prided myself on making every client feel like they're my only client. I'm not really sure that was the best thing to do, because how do you scale that? When they're calling me at 10 o'clock at night, I'm answering the phone. I know that I shouldn't do that. But from that perspective, I really was after that referral business because I didn't have the center of influence when I started this position, so I really needed to overindulge them in that service-oriented business and really knowledge of the area. I will say when I started, I was new to the area, so I didn't even know where I was. So this was during the MapQuest days, and I only had about 8-10 months of no GPS. So I was going from A to B, B to C, C to D, right, and going to the properties. And I'd meet with them, and they'd say, well, we don't want to go to C. And I'm like, well, I don't know how to get from B to D. So I'm like, well, we're just going to pass by that property because I have no idea where I'm going. So, when I say that perspective, they really did think I knew it. Now, I was very, very knowledgeable about the areas and things like that from at the time, it was our MLS was Trend. I would find every bit of information. I would have the seller's disclosure. I would know about the neighborhood. I did all of that. That was a lot of work that you can't scale. You can't do that all the time. But from that perspective, it was really from beginning to end. And I've worked with people for 3 years, and they're like, when I tell you I may have shown them 100 houses, I did, but I never thought of it as a waste of time because I was always learning. So I knew the neighborhoods then. I mean, again, it was 2007 where we had too much inventory. So, I had 100 houses to show people, unfortunately. But, from that perspective, I just used it as, kind of a positive. And I'm like, well, I'm going to know every area. And it really did that second year. I'm thinking, well, I've been in every one of these houses more than once. So I think even the negative things, I think if you kind of turn it around to a positive, I think that, kind of helps and bodes well with your clients as well.
I just want to add to that experience. Something I did about 5 years ago, I added a transaction coordinator to my team. And if you haven't done that, for creating a great experience, for no other reason, do it. It'll help you, it'll leverage you, it'll help take some of the details off your plate. But what we did was we envisioned the perfect transaction, what we thought it should be, taking all the ideas I'd ever heard from anybody else, and we just laid out a checklist of what would you like to have done if you had all the time in the world. during a transaction for your client, whether it was a buyer, seller, move up client, whatever. And we created all these checklists and then we employed somebody to put them into action. And that was extremely beneficial to our business. So if you don't have a transaction coordinator or an assistant acting like a transaction coordinator, that's a great way to give that white glove service we're talking about.
There was a top producer in my area that recommended that I was probably for about a year and a half saying, I can't afford one, I can't afford one, I can't afford one. And that was a waste of a couple of years. And he said, just do it. You will more than pay for that position. That actually was very true. It did take me a couple of years, like when you're talking about transaction coordinator or a full-time assistant. The assistant really is your transaction coordinator at that time when I was doing, let's say, maybe 40 deals, 50 deals. And from that perspective, I realized that we're real busy for 6 or 8 months, and then we've got all this downtime. And then you feel like, well, I can't really afford them because I'm not, the money's not coming in at that time. But that time is really more for business development. So they should be helping you do business development. So I've changed that over the last couple of years, and that has really helped. So, I would assume most of these people in this room have probably an assistant, but if you are kind of teetering on that, I will say that when you asked what would you do differently, I would probably have an assistant earlier. When I thought that I couldn't afford it, just do it.
So, John, you talked about going through and making a list for that transaction coordinator, right? To do some things that perhaps you didn't have time to do before. What did you assign them that really helped set you apart?
What a great question. You know what? I think it was about the details. It was really about, Sarah, the making sure that we thought of every detail. So the client doesn't know the transaction. They've never, they've been through 3 or 4 transactions in their life while we've been through hundreds or thousands, right? So anticipating what problems might occur or what problems might happen and taking care of that up front, setting expectations, that's what your checklist should be thinking about. It should be thinking about, how many times have we sat there and had a problem and your client's mad at you and you're thinking, what could I have done to avoid where I am right now, having somebody angry with me? Well, it's always about setting up this expectation. And that's what this checklist should do. It should give information and set up expectations every step of the way. I see Renee Stringer right there in front. He's from Orange Beach, Alabama, right there.
Roll Tide. Well, the client really knows as well. I think once that happens, that they're taken care of at every level. It's not just John. It's people behind John. There's always going to be somebody that's going to take care of them at every level. And I think that's important.
I think that was a big change for me too. Like when I would introduce, I had like my assistant that was just in the office that was just doing those things for me. And that was a transition that I'm like, okay, well, this is my assistant. She's going to now call you and set that expectation. It took a lot off my plate by actually introducing that person and the expectation that now they're going to follow up. If you ever have any problem, call me, but I am on each one of those emails and I see it and I see the communication. That really, really did help, from that perspective, and actually setting up the whole expectation again. I think we all probably assume that our clients should know certain things and they don't, and that's fine. But assuming that they don't, putting that, checklist in an area right in the beginning to set the expectation has been a huge difference. I only started that a couple of years ago too.
Awesome. So let's get to what I think is kind of the really important part, and that's after the transaction. I think that's really where staying in touch, staying top of mind, because ultimately after the transaction is where that referral is going to come back in some way. So let's just kind of open it up here, whether it's events, closing gifts, what is your strategy after the transaction to stay front of mind and know that they will refer you?
I'm big on events. I love doing events. So to take a couple minutes, I'm going to tell you about some of the events that we've done that I'm really proud of. I do client events, I do community events, and they're all geared toward just what you said, staying top of mind so that you're not having to constantly. The reality is, you guys, when you've been in this business for a while, it's hard to call our clients every month like you should do, right? You're lucky to get it done every quarter. But if you could touch them in some way and invite them to a client event, and they come, that's gold. I do a Christmas bash at the end of every year, first Friday of December, and we put a ton of effort into this. We feed people, we give them lots of drinks, we have casino night, um, tons of sponsors and door prizes. People get there and they come back every single year. They always tell me how fun this event is, and they always come back. That's kind of our signature event. But throughout the year, we have a pickle parade that we do. That's the city puts on. So we put on a big.
Wait, can we
Did
stop
you
right pickle? I learn something new about John every day. I've been talking to him for weeks.
Best Made Pickles is in our town in Mansfield, Texas. So they put on this huge pickle parade that is like the fourth largest parade in Texas. Brings 40,000 people. My office is downtown. So we take advantage of our location and all these people being there, and we put on this huge event in our location there.
I was like, wait, is this something you personally do? A pickle
Pickle parade. Y'all should go have a pickle parade. I swear. You know what?
Have you ever dressed up as a pickle?
No, I never have. No.
Next year.
But one of the really cool ones, you guys, that we've done is I've done a monthly happy hours with my clients. So just inviting, I usually invite 25 to 30 people. Really anxious to get this going again post COVID because we haven't done it for over a year now. But I would invite them to a local wine bar that most people didn't even know existed. So I was now introducing them to a cool location that they didn't know about, and serving them some cool pizza from a place down the road that they didn't even know about. And it gave me an opportunity to pick and choose 25 or 30 people to invite. And I would always invite them to bring people if they had questions about real estate. And those are people that I currently worked with, that I was hoping to work with, and past clients. I would invite all of them.
So I don't really do client events. It was supposed to be my 2020 initiative, and I was supposed to do a huge one in March, and it didn't happen. I was a little bit intimidated, so actually it was probably better that it didn't happen because I just didn't want to walk into a room with 100 clients and go, oh my God, I haven't spoken to them in years. And now, I'm here and I won't be able to work the room. So I decided that I'm going to do it a little bit differently and kind of like quarterly, smaller type of things. Start out that way. Maybe I can get to a point where I have like a very large event. It's pickle fest. But from my perspective, I have 4 kids, and Jim and I, had a, great house with a pool in the backyard, and I was never there. I was like always working. And I decided that I was going to have a party every Thursday, an open house, and I was going to be by the pool. Now I was working half the time, but I would invite all of my kids, friends, their parents, and actually whoever I was working with at this time, like, come over on Thursday. I have an open house every Thursday. And it was usually from June through September. And I did that for about 10 years. I wouldn't call it a client event, but I would, I basically had a party every Thursday for 3 or 4 months out of the year. And I really did become very close with a lot of my clients. So again, not scalable. So that's kind of where I'm at, where I have to do things a little bit differently. And so I'm getting great ideas from John, actually, but I won't be doing a pickle parade.
I love that because everyone, I think, fears being that realtor where they're like, hey, are you ready to sell? Are you ready to list? And they don't want to be that person in their lives, especially with their sphere, right? So
It's
how
better
did
if
you
it comes
weave
off
that
a little
in?
naturally. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So how did you weave that into that type of environment, and how did you start to get your name out there kind of organically in that?
Well, it was really just through word of mouth. I mean, you're talking about referral business. I got a call this week, and this girl, her name is Amanda, and she called me. She's like, oh, I had a friend that I told to call you because you guys are the best team in town. And I'm thinking, I don't even know who she's talking about, but she was out there promoting me. And now she's a client of mine. I still, because I was embarrassed because I'm thinking, who is this girl that referred, and who is that person? So I haven't even found out because that happened this week. But I think that's the other thing too, is that I think people tell people. So again, because I'm kind of in a small concentrated area, I think they know me from, that perspective that I'm from the area, I'm part of the community. And so that has really helped me. And the referral business has definitely, it probably kicked in about year 4 or year 5. And now I'm kind of going back and finding that people are referring me that I closed almost 10 years ago. And not because I kept up with them, but it's a very, very small area. So I am trying to do better with that. But I think it really is just your experience that you've had, people will refer you for sure.
So, John, how you were talking about your events? Obviously, this year events there was no pickle parade. I'm assuming the Christmas bash probably didn't happen. So, how did you pivot? How did you adjust based off the fact that you couldn't get all of your clients together this year?
That's a super good question, especially since we had something happen this year that's never happened before. So I immediately went into action for my audience, and that's what I looked at it as. How can I serve my community right now? There's so much uncertainty. I'm thinking about the last convention I went to was R4 last year, and it was about a week and a half after R4 that we got shut down. Right, all of a sudden we know about COVID, and I just went into action. I went on Facebook Live and did live at 5 every day. Every day I did live at 5, and I put my banker on there on Zoom to talk about the PPP program. I had a past client that was an ex Red Cross employee. She was a director with Red Cross, and she was really in tune to the COVID numbers. And this is back when we didn't know anything about COVID. And I just put her on as the expert. And I put my lender on to talk about what was happening with rates because of what. So, all the things that people might be wondering about, I was trying to take the uncertainty out of the equation and just be there for people because nobody knew what to do. And I just went into action. That's exactly what I did. Continued that throughout the year. And we really haven't had any physical events yet, but I'm really anxious to.
I feel like we did the same thing. Like I think for a moment you're thinking, "Oh my God, what am I doing? Where are we going?" And for about 2 weeks, we had every realtor saying, "Well, how are we going to do this? How are we going to do this?" And kind of pointing fingers, and this one's not doing it right, and that one's not doing it right. And I did adopt really early on just to be positive with my clients. That we're going to get through it. That I recommended certain things. I was already doing kind of virtual tours. I was already doing, floor plans and 3D, Matterports. I was already kind of doing a lot of that stuff already. And from that perspective, I think in that first 4 weeks, 5 weeks, I probably sold 7 or 8 properties sight unseen. And that was just an interesting thing. I think there's just certain ways that you can kind of overcome and try to look for the positive because we did get through it. We had a banner year, as well. And I think that, if we concentrate on all the negative, we're just going to be derailed. So you really just have to adapt and change.
We have a question coming in from the app. How do you guys track your return on investment for your events?
I don't really do those. So, John, you can take that.
John,
No, that's not one you want me to take because I'm horrible at tracking and horrible at knowing my return on investment. So I'm going to be straight with you about that. But I do know, like, I'm going to tell you, can I tell a quick story?
Absolutely.
Because this goes into events. And so one of the things I'm not afraid of doing, with my team's help, by the way, is trying new things and trying new events. And I remember one of the first ones I did. This was when the market had not come back yet. It was still kind of horrible in a neighborhood that was especially hurt. And a teacher friend of mine, they wanted to sell their house, and so I really wanted I really wanted to go out of the way for them and make this happen and use it as a leverage point. And I put together. It was during Christmas, and I put together this huge open house. And I had a photographer there. I had somebody selling jewelry there. I had the homeowner cooking hot dogs and hamburgers in the backyard. I invited everybody I knew. I went to knocked on every door in this neighborhood, about 600 doors. I put so much marketing and effort into making sure that this was the awesomest open house ever, right? Happened to be on the same day. I didn't do my homework and did not realize that it was the same day as what the city was doing, a huge Christmas parade. And so nobody except one person came to my open house, okay? And it was a neighbor 2 houses down, and it was the mother. She was visiting her son, and she just came down and popped in. And I can't tell you how embarrassed I was for all the people that were there. I'd put all this effort in, and the photographer didn't snap a picture the whole time, and we got hot dogs not being eaten. I mean, that's kind of embarrassing, but I got to tell you, out of that interaction with that woman, I I got at least 8 transactions from that woman, and so many people from that neighborhood had no idea that the open house didn't go well. They thought I was magical, that I killed it. They thought that I just put on this huge show, and they were calling me left and right, like, I want you to come sell my house. I saw what you did over here. Nobody knew that nobody came. So it's an it's an interesting story because I put the effort in, and as human beings, we want to see, we want to see people in the audience, right? If nobody was here right now, we'd be feeling horrible about talking to nobody. But you know what? There's still fruit in all of it, all the activities you do, especially if you do intentional marketing leading up to it.
Mine's the same thing. I mean, I didn't, for the back to the question where they said the return on investment for your events, I didn't do events, but if I parlayed that into the marketing campaigns that I, chose to do, let's say, I did a magazine and I paid for that article, and it was $2,000, let's say it was. And really, my return on investment is if I get one person, right, that actually buys a property to me or sells a property or refers me because of that article, then it was worth it. Because it is always, I feel like it's hard to really translate. I find that it is with my business. The return on investment is not always tangible, that you can always say like, yes, I put this in and then I got that out. So kind of to your point, I did my first open house. I didn't even have business cards. And it was a woman in my office who had just lost her husband and said, I can't do the open house. And I'm like, all right, what do I do? I don't know. Lockbox. What do you mean by a lockbox? It was the whole thing. So she's like, well, I'll get you into the house. So I go in this house, and it was a pretty good open house. I think I had about 10 people there. I wound up getting 8 transactions from my first open house. It took a year and a half, but that one day, I didn't know what the hell I was doing. So, I always go back to that because I always say, I don't want to put anything out there unless it's professional or unless it's this or it's that. And I'm thinking, I didn't even know anything about real estate. And I sat in an open house and did, basically 8 deals within that, first year and a half. And so it is really just getting yourself out there. So, it's not always just a return on investment. I really think it's really just putting in the time and meeting with as many people as you can and just being yourself.
We talk about getting on the grocery carts. There is no return on investment for that. You're never going to know. To Marianne's point, you can't ask somebody every single time they call, where did you find me? Did you see me on the grocery cart? I mean, that's ridiculous. It's about being intentional. It's about realizing I'm sending flyers or posters or whatever I'm doing to this geographic area, and they all shop here. I want them to see me there also, so they don't ever forget who the real estate professional in that area is.
Marianne, tell me the story that you told me before about the text that you sent and what that was like.
So this happened about 2 weeks ago, and we were talking about the first app, and Chris, my broker's right here. Chris Terry, Remax Properties, Newtown, and Mary Brandt.
Shameless plug.
I know. And, because I was at R4 last year, and Chris is like, oh, the first app, and it stresses me out because I'm my own worst critic. So every time I feel like I missed something, I just beat myself up, and that's kind of part of my personality. And it does stress me out, I have to say. So anyway, I have made a conscious effort to be a little bit more intentional about my center of influence and my list and going on. So I was passing by a neighborhood that I sold a house in, and I sold it to him in 2018. And I literally was at the light. I texted, and I said, "Hey Chris, just thinking about you guys. Hope you're well. I just passed by your street." He's like, "Holy crap, Marianne! I can't believe this. We were just going to call you because we're going to list our house." Now again, he would have called me, but I will tell you, I was so relieved that I reached out to him first because I have not talked to him since 2018, since we settled. We were supposed to go out for a big steak dinner. We never did. And I really felt bad. And, I guess my point is that just the moment you're thinking of somebody, just send them something quick. Like, just do it, because it doesn't have to be, a mailer, a phone call. It doesn't have to be all of those things. When it pops into your head, just do it. So that was a great success. And actually, we're going to be under contract soon. So
Nice.
Sounds like she could use the first app, huh?
Sounds like it.
To reapply. Well,
So talk about other than past client events. How do you and just like you think of them, you reach out to them. What do you have a system or a process that you use for follow up? Whether it's a drip campaign, do you have a system that you use? And if not, that's okay. How do you know then? Oh, it's time to reach out to this person, or do you?
So yes, I have a CRM that we use, and we try to use it to its full extent. It's pretty extensive. I use Chime, in case you're wondering, and there's a bunch of good ones. We used to use Follow Up Boss. That's a really good one as well. But if you have a good CRM, I understand Booge. I haven't played with it. I understand it's a really good CRM that Remax is putting together for us. It doesn't matter what you're using, just use it. And they all have tools that do exactly what we need them to do, and that's keeping in touch with our sphere, keeping them organized. And if you just do what your CRM tells you to do every day, that's really, for me, that's the key. That's all you need to do. Just be consistent about following the tools that are in your CRM, no matter what they are.
so I've always done just an Excel spreadsheet that, of course, I could kind of put into any CRM. I've probably used 3 or 4 over the years, not very well. I always feel like I use them kind of surface ways, but I have it now in Bouge and kind of have them categorized as different, kind of different levels. The people that are referring me, the people that I've bought and sold with a house, and then I have all of the leads that are coming in kind of as a separate. So I have different drip campaigns kind of going out to them, but I'm really just started with Bouge. So I'm looking forward to using all of what it does do for you. And then I met Stacia. I don't know if she's here. I think she was here. I just met her in one of the previous meetings, and she was doing a whole video thing that I'm going to try. So that's my new 2021 initiative, is the whole video thing.
I like
Along
it.
with Bouge, yeah.
Previous to COVID, I used the events that we talked about, and I've only scratched the surface of our events actually. But the events that we've talked about, I use that as an excuse to reach out and stay in touch with my sphere. It's easier to reach out to your past clients in your sphere and say, "Hey, I'm putting on this charity event. I'd love for you to join us at this happy hour, whatever it is." Rather than saying, "Hey, you can have a real estate conversation," but sometimes it's just easier to do it that way.
And I've been doing like every St. Patty's Day I do to my whole sphere. Basically, it's a St. Patty's Day card, and I put in a couple of lottery tickets. It's been a few winners over the years. Nobody, can't work anymore, but so I've done that, and that's kind of been good. So I always get follow up information. Hey, thanks a lot for the losing ticket, Marianne. That kind of thing. But it's really kind of any opportunity, like you say. And I think from a getting in touch, we always do that right before the holidays. We always have sent that, but again, it's not like more personal. I think trying to be a little bit more personal and intentional, will go a long way. I think that the social media really does give you that opportunity to do that.
What do you use for closing gifts, or do you use them, and do you do any type of follow up after?
So what I usually do is whatever conference I'm at the year before, I buy 100 of whatever, and then I use that all year. And I make sure that whoever bought and sold with me, because I don't want to give them the same gift twice. So that was kind of my whole thing. So I have like 1 year of supply of something that I give. 1 year was just a bottle of red and a bottle of white and a customized kind of repeat bag. Then I've done, what have I done? What I've done the Oh, I did the Cutco things. Yeah, I did the Cutco customized things. Those were like, and usually it's about $100 gift. Honestly, is what I leave them. Usually with some sort of branding on it. The cutting boards with it. Sometimes I'm doing a whole thing for their kids. If they've got a bunch of kids, I'll do a whole ice cream kind of package. So I try to do that, from a customized standpoint. Then, if they are somebody that I want to kind of meet up with kind of after, I'll just set a date for about a month after and do a nice kind of thank you. And like, once you get settled in the house, let's get out. and kind of schedule it that way. So yeah, client gifts I've always done, different levels.
Let me give you a good one, Marianne. You ready? All right. So I've got a local person. She was actually one of my clients, and she presented this to me. She used to do this on windows, the old sash windows, and that's what I used to give out. But now we just do it on boards. So they're really well done, nice kind of rustic looking boards with your name on it, with an established date. So you would say, for me, it would say Tashera established 2021, whatever. You're either establishing that home or you're establishing whatever you want. But people love that, and what I love about it is I see posts with that in above their fireplace because it's that nice. It's nice enough to be above their fireplace. You guys, that thing cost me $35, I think, to have somebody make it, and somebody in your market makes it. I guarantee you. Really, really thoughtful gift that stays there, so they always remember who gave it to them. And then when they call you to list your home, and you walk in 4 or 5 years later, and you're like, there it is. They always call me and thank me for it too. So it's hard to find gifts that stick around and make people think about you 3, 4, 5 years later, and that one does that.
One of the ones that I'm doing now is it's actually like a house book. So it's basically through Shutterfly. It's all the photos that I just paid whatever $200 to $500 for, and it basically has the year that they went into that house and the year that they left. So it basically is 2006 to 2021. I'll usually go onto their Facebook and pull a family photo off and kind of have that on the back, and then it's branded on the back. So I remember thinking when we left our home in 2000, I guess it was 2006. My kids were second grade, my twins were second grade, and then the boys were sixth grade and eighth grade. And I kept remembering, like, I have only had one home that I'm one of 9 kids, and my mom is still in the same house after 62 years. And I couldn't imagine, like, wow, like you just keep switching their memories. And so I had made a book for the kids, just like on their rooms and all that. So I did that. Probably we've done 5 this year, which I thought was kind of cool. So it's really not for the parents. It's really more for the kids. And it's really the people that have loved their home, whether they built it or they're really emotionally attached to a house. So that's when I pull that one out. Some people are like, it's just a new house. They've moved 18 times, they'll do a different type of gift. But that one actually has gone over really well. It's very personal.
And once they see those personal gifts, they ask, where did you get that? Who gave it to you? And then once again, it brings you back front of mind. Do you have any questions, Sarah?
We do. Folks are asking about your social media engagement and how you leverage social media throughout the transaction.
I don't.
That's an honest question. I mean, do you use social media throughout the course of the transaction? I'm assuming they mean just listed, pending, sold type of information.
My company actually is very supportive in that. So if I've got a new listing, we actually share a lot of that, internally in the office, but then we will do just listed, we do the just solds, or if there's a coming soon, that type of thing. So from that perspective, the office has been really supportive in that, which has been great because I always think I'm going to do it and don't get to it. So the office does it.
My broker calls me maybe 3 to 5 times a year, and usually when she does, I'm like, uh-oh, what did I do, right? Has anybody done? She's calling me right now while I'm on this stage. I'm like, uh-oh, what's going on? Social media engagement is huge, you guys. Before, during, and after the transaction, it should be something you're always doing, and it doesn't have to be real estate related. I get crazy thoughts in my brain after reading my book in the morning, and I'll share those with people. I like to do it. It makes people nervous. I like to do it when I'm in the car. I've got a little thing on my car. I just put the phone up there and I just drive and talk, and just spitting out ideas that I have, right? And then I also have a company that I use that puts out real estate related posts that make me look great. Keeping Current Matters, by the way, you guys, has great articles that you can post if you're not a subscriber to that. I used to be a subscriber to Inman News. They're also another great resource for that kind of thing. So just take stuff like that that other people have written, post it so you could be the expert and you could be beneficial to your audience, whoever might be watching. But most importantly, just get out there and do it. I'm starting a video blog and a podcast on March 31st, actually a weekly one with my son who works with me. So we're going to sit down and be doing this on a weekly basis. Kind of one of the more interesting things we're doing nowadays.
I agree. If you see somebody's social media and it hasn't been updated since 2018, I think there's kind of a perception that they're not doing anything, they're not doing business. So staying current, friend of mine, absolutely. Sarah, what else do we have?
Let's see. What percentage of your business would you say is referrals?
I would say I'm about 50-50 at this point. I'd say 50% is referral business. I have to say, since I started with Remax, I was telling my husband Jim this morning that I really have never gotten so many referral businesses from all of you out there in 3 years than I did in 10 years at the other company. So I have to say, Remax does a great job of supporting their own and really interviewing, and I've done the same. So, for the referral business is not just your referrals from obviously your clients, but from Remax. It's really kind of been amazing. So that's been awesome and just nice to see.
I'm not good at tracking, y'all, but I happen to know that 55% is the number. I happen to know that. So that, and I think that that's growing too. Just as your business gets more and more mature, if you're not careful, that number will become too big of a part of the piece of pie of your business. I do believe that you should, if you intend to stick around in this business, I believe that you should be constantly innovating and looking for new pillars of business and not relying just on referrals. It's a big part of our business, and that's kind of where we stand on, but you've got to find other places for business as well.
I think that's what I was thinking about. How we've progressed in our business and what got us to that point wasn't referrals. So that's what your goal is, though, is to be a referral business, but you can't forget what you started with to keep that pipeline going, which obviously for your son, for my son too, and for your team. And so really going back and mentoring and training how we did that and how we grew that referral business, because that's what will keep it going and, going on for your succession plan. Right, John?
I have one.
So I actually have a question for you guys. I know we had talked about the importance of embracing those challenges and embracing those mistakes, right? And how that has essentially shaped who you are today and equipped you to handle this current environment and all the crazy that's happening right now. But in your current state, if you could go back and tell, day one Marianne or day one John, do this now, what would you say?
Well, it goes back to, I think, what John said initially, is just staying consistent. Everything that I intentionally did, I did listen to that, I have to say. Like, I just did it, and then I just did it every day. Being consistently in the office. I didn't really want to be in the office every day, but I'm like, well, if I'm home, I won't be hearing that, kind of thing. So it was really being consistent. If I did a marketing piece, or if I did some online advertising, I didn't do it for less than 6 months, because there was no way for me to number one track. I'm not the best tracker, but I know that for the consistency and doing something for at least a 6-month period or a 1-year period. I remember doing a print ad, and I still do print, believe it or not, because I feel like I created this little print ad that I don't want to give up, because if I give it up, somebody else's face is going to be there and it's going to tick me off. So it's the only reason why I'm doing it. And, Chris says, I always say I'm not competitive, and I obviously am. And from that perspective, like it was a little bit out of my area, and I'm at this kitchen table, and this was one of the last times I asked, where did you find me? Because I'm sitting at the table, and there on the refrigerator was that print ad. And I'm thinking, that's so funny. Somebody cut it out, put it on the refrigerator, and then called me, and here I am. So I just stopped asking, because it's hard to measure. If you didn't have it on the refrigerator, I wouldn't have known. So I did do that. Now I've been doing that, I'd say 10 years. And I have never stopped it. So that's like the part of the branding that I do. And what I would do is I'd pull a tidbit of kind of like a market update. Yes, inventory is low, or maybe what Wall Street Journal is saying about my area at that point. So I would put that little bit of information. It was called O'Keefe's Corner, and I would just give a little bit of real estate information. Now, I was a brand new agent. I knew nothing about what I was, but I would take it from somewhere else. And that's how I learned as well, so little things like that.
I love it. There's some gold over there, Marianne. So I would tell John, starting out, start with video immediately. Just do it. Have y'all seen? There is, gosh, wish I could remember her her name. She is doing 30
maybe
days.
Mary from Boston.
She must be from Boston. She does a video 30 seconds for 30 days. Everybody know what I'm talking about? Tom Ferry started this with one of his clients. He's been pushing it, but and now a ton of people are seeing it if you're paying attention. But anything like that, you guys just get out there, get in front of the camera. I got to tell you, one of the companies that was really beneficial to helping me get started with video marketing early on was a company out of San Diego called Viral Marketing. And they were instrumental. They've got tons of great marketing plans and things that they'll coach you through and help you through, and producing videos and just making the whole process easy.
So we have time for one more question. So what I want to ask both of you is what happens if you find out that one of your past clients did not refer you or use somebody else? Yeah. Do you say something? Do you not say something? What do you do at that point? How do you?
I always take the high road, because this is my thought. If they didn't refer me, it's probably my fault. So hey, listen, I saw your house on the market. That's awesome. Hey, listen, I might have a buyer, whatever. I just literally cut it off, because I don't, first of all, I'm living in a small town. So I don't want them, for whatever reason. And usually it's like, oh my God, Marianne, I was going to use you, but my aunt Joni is, a realtor, and I really had to use her. And I'm like, yeah, no big deal. It's fine. I just act like it's fine, which of course I'm not fine with it. But I just, I think I kind of tried to get ahead of it. There was a big listing. It is still my biggest listing that I ever had. I was listing it at like 2.9. First of all, I went into the house and I thought I was going to price it at 1.6, and walked into the house. I'm like, oh God, I have no idea how much this house cost. I have no idea, because it had a pool inside that I didn't know about. It had 4-car garage in the back that I didn't know about. This was 10 years ago, so I didn't have a lot of, access to a lot of information at that time. So I literally picked it out of the hat and I said, probably about 2.8. And he goes, that's exactly what I was thinking. And I'm like, and I got that listing. I did bring him a very strong offer, like maybe 2.75 on a 2.95. And he didn't take it. And he had told me he wanted to have his daughter's weddings there. And he was very, very upset. Anyway, I brought him multiple offers over the years, and I had the listing for almost 3.5 years. He took the house off the market to have his daughter's wedding. And within that year, he said he was going to be listing, and it came up with a competitive agent and broker. I'm telling you, I thought I was going to cry. So I call them and I'm like, oh my God, you're killing me. I'm like, listen, I wish you guys nothing but the best. And I really, hopefully I'll have a buyer. Anyway, they had the listing for about 6 or 8 months. And she goes, oh my God, Marianne, we had no idea. We just thought that he this and he that and he this and he that. We realized how great and wonderful we would take the listing back. So I did sell the listing eventually for the lowest price and the only non-cash offer that I brought them. But they were thrilled. So if I had not called them and done that, I would never have gotten that listing back, because they would have been too embarrassed that they didn't go with somebody, that they went with somebody else. So that kind of taught me a really valuable lesson. Just take the high road, give them a call, be positive. And I got that listing, and it was still the highest price house that I ever sold.
John, how about you? What do you do when you find out they don't use you?
Well, there's usually a 4-letter word that comes out of my mouth that only my team hears, and then I do what Mary did.
Marianne.
Hey, you know what, y'all? Listen. This is Leanne over here, and she doesn't like to be called Leanne. And this is Marianne, and she has to be called Marianne.
No, you called her Lee, and she said, my name's Leanne. She likes to be called Leanne. I'm Marianne.
I can't get all this straight. The ands mess me all up. So anyways, that's it. Just take the high road and do exactly what Mary said, because you're going to learn something from it. Or Marianne.
Guys so much. Can I get a big round of applause for John and Marianne?
Thank you.
Thank you guys. I appreciate you coming. Come visit us afterwards if you dare. Honey, how are you?
Oh, let me stop it.
This
All
is
right,
the last session before
it.
happy hour, so I know
Um,
we're all excited to be here.
Oh my gosh.
Welcome everybody. My name is Leanne. This is Sarah. We're going to be moderating the panel. Just an FYI, I'm a